of Turf. Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Legend of Korra comic video. This is going to be my early speculation discussion video for Legend of Korra Turf Wars Part 3. So the final part of Turf Wars discussion, knowing what happens in Part 1 and 2, what is going to happen in Part 3 in my opinion. So I think it's important to start off with the fact that one quick little bit of news is that the book has actually been delayed. So if you have Part 2, you'll notice that at the back of the book it says Part 3 coming in June 2013. The book has in fact been delayed to August 2018. Specifically, it's going to release in comic book stores on the 1st of August, and then mass market release is going to be the 14th of August. So very unfortunate month-and-a-half delay. No real reason given for it other than just, you know, like, we're working on it, we maybe need more time. In that Irene Coe, I think, did explain that, like, she finished the art and just said that, you know, there's still other stuff to be done in the book as well. Like, of course, we know colors, lettering, general, like, editing and refixes of things and stuff like that to do. But, you know, obviously you'd prefer a little bit of a bigger explanation for, like, why it's been delayed by a month and a half, basically, when there's already been so many delays on the book. This is kind of the last thing the series really needed. But let's get into the speculation on Part 3 by starting off with the description that we have for the book from Amazon and so on, solicitations. So, Turf Wars Part 3, when Asami is kidnapped, Korra sets out to the spirit wilds to find her. Now teeming with dark spirits influenced by the half-spirit, half-human Tokuga, the landscape is more dangerous than ever before. The two women must trust in each other and work together if they are to make it out alive. Their fate is revealed in this stunning, action-packed conclusion to The Legend of Korra Turf Wars. I think the first thing to talk about with Turf Wars Part 3, given how Part 2 ends and what the Part 3 description talks about, is that I feel the odd plot out ends up being the election plot with Julie and Raiko. While I feel they'll of course be in the book and will probably deal with a little bit of stuff that has an impact on the presidential race, I don't think the actual presidential race will see its finish or conclusion in Turf Wars. Just because it feels like we're still so early on in the race and that Julie hasn't officially announced to the city yet that she's running. So not even Raiko really knows that he has anyone running against him. Only like we as the audience and then a couple of the main characters actually know that Julie is doing this. So that still has to happen. The whole campaign trail has to happen. The election itself has to happen. Counting and then actually announcing who the president is. If it goes to plan, of course, that's what happens. There I suppose is the slight opportunity that like Julie maybe ends up in a position where she's sort of just like default president-elect if potentially something happens with Raiko or Raiko's campaign manager, where it's revealed that whatever they've been doing to slow down the food packages from Ba Sing Se, it ends up being this thing that really destroys his reputation and he has to like abandon the presidential race. That would obviously leave Julie running against no one and would leave her as basically, the only candidate. She kind of is elected by default. So, you know, maybe something like that I can see happening where like they do something to maybe explain why Raiko's acting so like cartoonishly like evil politician compared to even like the series. But again, I'm not really sure exactly what they're going to do here. I can see the idea of like, okay, this book is going to be very much centered around the fact that the big incident, the big battle is coming to the city. In the Spirit Wilds, in the city itself, we know Tokuga's heading down there with his army of triads, and he's got Asami, and of course Korra, the police, the airbenders, everyone's going to be involved here because the airbenders are doing their march towards the portal. Tokuga's heading down. The police force will of course be mobilizing. Korra is going to be coming, Team Avatar. All of the characters are going to be coming. There's going to be a big battle, I assume, in the city. And that means that, you know, the leaders of the city are of course going to have to make some moves, make some announcements to help protect the normal citizens. And I think this is where we're probably going to see any sort of development with regards to the presidential race of how do the leaders tackle an incident like this. Raiko has in the past shown that he's not the best at handling these situations, often completely misjudging spiritual matters and obviously then complaining when it doesn't quite go how he wants it, even though Korra kind of bails him out of it. And the few times when he maybe does make a positive decision, it's usually just to surrender to the villain. So maybe this will be a chance for Zhu Li to step up and make a big move that really shows everyone, and not just the audience, not just a couple of the main characters, why she should be elected as leader. I can see them doing that, but I think that's about it. I'd be very shocked if we got the like inauguration of the next president of Republic City in this book. And unless they're going to give it a real arc, I'd kind of be shocked if they really try to even out the portrayal of Raiko. It sort of feels like we're sort of fast-tracking Zhu Li here. I think we'll maybe present that maybe she's maybe lacking in some aspects as a leader, but that she's much better than Raiko regardless of that. So I think that more or less covers that plot point. Of course, in the comments under the video, let me know your thoughts on every plot point in the book and what you think is going to happen. But I think for this discussion, I think that covers most of the Zhu Li and Raiko stuff. I really don't know how much more involved they're going to be, because I think there's a lot to really tackle with just the whole Spirit Portal, Spirit Wilds incident stuff that's happening here. So obviously the other thing is that Asami was kidnapped. That's what the opening line of the preview says. When Asami is kidnapped, and we saw it happen. So given that they've done this, where do they go with Asami as a character? Because this to me sort of confirms that, like, okay, there's at least going to be a section of the book where Korra and Asami aren't together. And even though later on in the description they say the two women must trust in each other and work together if they're to make it out alive, it suggests that there is a reunion and that they spend a good part of the book together. So I almost take that as like fairly early in the book, like Korra and Asami get back together, and like the plot in a way is them safely getting out of the now dangerous spirit world, versus how the book started, the Turf Wars started, with a very peaceful journey on their first vacation date together in the spirit world. That seems like a very interesting bookmark. But the whole idea of them suggesting must trust in each other, as if like, did they not trust each other? I got they were maybe sort of alluding to some slight issues with the two of them, but nothing serious as such. And if they can work together, which we know they can, so it doesn't really feel like there's any sort of a conflict between Korra and Asami. It's just going to be about the specifics of how they get Asami free, and whether that be Korra and the team, Mako Bolin and so on, fighting to the point where they can get Asami free, or if Asami manages to find an opportunity and get herself out. I feel probably they'll want to have Asami maybe, at least to a degree, assist with her own escape, rather than just relying on everyone else. In that I feel that once they get around to the whole plot point, as we see here, now teaming with dark spirits influenced by the half-spirit, half-human Tokuga, however they go about explaining that might be a big enough distraction where Asami gets an opportunity to escape, but she's sort of like isolated somewhere in the spirit world, and that's where Korra finds her, and they have to together get out. That to me feels like what they're going to do with Asami. There's maybe a slight opportunity to reflect on some stuff if she ever gets to talk to Won Young Kum, and that we know that they have a sort of history together. There could be some somewhat interesting revelations there. That could be how we get any sort of development for Kum as a character himself, if Asami can convince him to maybe make a different decision with regards to the spirit portal. In that I do feel that come the end of the book, Kum will probably end up being saved by our hero characters, and as to make amends for the mistakes that he's made as well as being saved, he will probably give up on his plan to make an amusement park around the spirit portal, and may end up supplying money to help the city, or to help build whatever they do with the spirit portal. As a quick initial thought, I'm thinking they might just go with Korra's idea of building somewhat of a kind of a park, a memorial park, nature reserve type area around the portal. So where it's not exactly cordoned off, but it's seen as a somewhat like sacred area that not everyone's going to go to, and it's a bit more of a peaceful area around the portal. I can see them doing that. Other than that, with Asami, I think you'll play maybe a little bit on whatever slight issues she and Korra are having about the fact that they had some slight miscommunication in part 2 about Asami wanting to do things on her own, not wanting Korra's help with the kind of security, maybe as Korra being overly protective, and maybe addressing that dynamic between the two of them. That might be the issue they have to deal with. But I think the Korra Asami stuff in the book will eventually just come down to the fact that they get out, they're happy together, and we lead basically to a very nice Korra Asami moment to end the book. I think that's definitely something we're going to get. I think we'll probably get the turtle duck boat ride with probably a kiss at the end to just kind of really do that kind of almost like fan servicey Korra Asami moment. That's just going to be like, you know, like the cutest thing ever type thing, just to end the book that's sort of about Korra Asami on a real high for the fans of that ship. That makes sense to me to just end it on a very positive note with that, as well as tying into some art that we sort of know is canon, explaining where it kind of came from. So I'd actually really like that to happen, because of course they kind of left off part 2 with the idea of like Korra and Asami had like organized a date, but they never had it because Asami was kidnapped. It would make sense to, you know, end the book with them actually going on another date. But that's to me seems like what they'll do with Asami. I hope she gets a chance to have a little bit of a bigger character arc, that something more notable about the character kind of comes out. Of course, I'd love it if they referenced her mother at all, just anything about it to kind of, maybe through characterizing Yasuko, explain more about Asami's character. But we'll move on. I suppose Mako and Bolin, and I suppose this also will explain the police force as well. I think obviously they're going to be involved in the city. We're trying to keep things safe in the city while Tokuga's attacking. We'll obviously see probably some struggles with the police handling mecha tanks and all that sort of stuff, like we saw before when Kuvira attacked. As for the brothers themselves, I hope with Mako, I think the key things they probably should do are, at some point in the book, very much suggest that his arm is healed and kind of solve that plot point. And I'd like to see the two brothers really get a chance to really shine in like a fight, where when it really comes down to it and it's like this is the final kind of fight scene of the book, I'd like the whole Team Avatar to really go at Tokuga. Bolin goes full lava bending, earth bending. Mako uses lightning, amazing fire bending, and they just like show that, you know, Team Avatar really get the victory here. Character wise, I think you'll probably do some final little things with like Bolin of like, yeah, I really like being a police officer. Maybe they'll do something where like I like these sort of cases, and he maybe becomes a little bit more of a specialized police officer compared to Mako, who I think very clearly is going more down to detective, potentially like chief, heading towards being the next chief of police role. Something like that to differentiate Bolin's role from Mako's, while still, I suppose, keeping them together. With Mako, I feel, obviously you've got the obvious thing of his injury, which I feel you probably should get past, with maybe a final healing session with Korra. And then maybe he could do some clever thing where he maybe figure something out, some good tactics to help deal with Tokuga. But I think the only real thing that they've sort of set up is that I do think, and I really, really believe this, that they will have a pretty notable scene, I think towards the end, but maybe not the very end of the book, where Mako talks to Korra and Asami, and it's sort of a more private conversation, they're not interrupted, and we finally, I suppose, get a chance to maybe resolve the whole, like, Mako feeling a little bit awkward about the relationship, and a few characters mentioning that to him. And I think the way they need to do this is just kind of take a neutral view on it. Address the fact that this is kind of awkward on both sides for them. That it shouldn't just be that Mako's the only one who feels awkward with this relationship. That to a degree, you know, the girls should I think maybe feel a little bit weird around Mako as well. But also that they should also, I think, understand like why he would feel awkward. And then Mako, of course, I think, of course, they should lead with the fact that he's perfectly fine with it. It's just going to take a little bit of time to accept. And just have it be that a mature moment of just them acknowledging that this is a bit of a weird situation that the three of them are in, but that, you know, come a couple of weeks and they're all used to it, it's going to be fine, and that Mako will always be a close friend of both of them. In that, I think the end of book 4 made it clear that, like, Mako will do anything for Korra, and then I'd like them to develop Mako and Asami's relationship a bit more and clarify some of that stuff. But I think a scene like that is needed, because I think it would be nice to get a very just sincere, nice moment with Mako, where we're not just sort of making fun of him for being awkward around romance stuff anymore. But I think that's about all we can hope for with kind of the brothers and Mako. I don't think there'll be anything particularly serious going on that front. As for Korra herself, I think it's kind of been clear that there's not really a character arc for her in this book, so it's mainly just going to be her reaction to, like, obviously Asami being kidnapped, and we'll see her very, I suppose, angry and maybe having to try and calm down about the fact that Asami's been kidnapped, and how to deal with that, how to go about organising things to get her back. And of course, I think we'll get some big moments. She's going to want some sort of revenge against Tokuga, and I'm not really sure how exactly she's going to do that. I get the impression she's probably going to spirit bend him, in that I think they may in the end go for the idea that she can see that Tokuga is being somewhat, like, affected by the fact that he's half spirit, and that she might be able to help him if she can spirit bend the, like, spirit half of him away. But the thing that they're trying to do in the book seems to be that they're leaning towards this idea of like Korra, your actions have consequences. Do you not realize this? I think Raiko and Tokuga have both said that to her, but it's hard to accept that as being any sort of an important plot point, because the context of both situations brought up are just like, yeah, I don't really see this as being, like, Korra's fault at all. Like, especially in the Tokuga thing, like, she was not involved really with the incident that led to Tokuga being spirit morphed. Like, Tokuga attacked the airbenders at the portal. He angered the spirits in this case. I suppose maybe he's technically trying to explain it by virtue of, like, the Avatar was meant to calm things down with the spirits, but the only reason the spirits were angry is because, like, you know, Korra couldn't do what she wanted to do, what she was meant to do. But at the same time, the reason that happened is because Tokuga attacked, which is the problem in the first place, and they attacked him because he was the one attacking. And sure, like, Korra stopped trying to, like, stop the dragon eel spirit which infected Tokuga because she saw that Asami was about to be hurt. But again, the exact same reason. Like, why was Korra distracted from helping you? Because your own, like, allies were attacking Asami. Like, so I don't really see anything there as such, unless Tokuga's alluding to something completely different. And the Raiko situation, very similar. While I think he somewhat has a valid point by bringing up the idea of, like, the timing on Korra's vacation with Asami wasn't ideal, in that the city was pretty badly messed up after book 4. Going on a vacation immediately after that, not the greatest idea, but you know, you understand why the character needed the break. We know Korra, and it doesn't seem like they were away for too long. And again, the reason you can't really see this as being too much of a serious point is that Raiko always flip-flops on, like, if he needs Korra or if he doesn't need Korra or what. But because he's always like, Korra, what were you doing that? Look at the trouble you caused. But then if she doesn't do something, just like, Korra wasn't here. You were on vacation. You weren't here to help us. And Korra just has no idea what way to really act with him. So I think they're trying to do something. Well, they'll probably lead with some sort of a thing where Korra gains some level of understanding about something like that. Maybe they managed to connect the whole slight issue she and Asami are having to these other things that have been said to her, and that's how we get past it. Other than that, it just feels like the usual, like, let's have characters in position of power is kind of like dogpile on Korra and blame her for everything, and just have kind of Korra be frustrated about that. I think we need to move past this arc and just, like, accept that, like, Korra's in a better place now and we can actually develop her. So that's that. As for the main plot, which is obviously Tokuga and his plan to take over the city by taking out the police and all this sort of stuff, I'm not really sure what they're going to do. Like, the preview, I think this is where the previews comes in quite handy, in that, okay, Korra sets out to the spirit wilds to find her. Now teaming with dark spirits, the landscape is more dangerous than ever. I'm sort of wondering here, like, when they say spirit wilds, that's not the spirit world, which means that we're realistically not going into the spirit portal, or maybe we will go in but then immediately come out. But then the landscape is more dangerous than ever seems to refer more to the spirit, the spirit world itself, rather than the spirit wilds, which is just the area surrounding the portal. So I'm kind of wondering here, what's the timing on, like, do dark spirits just come out and then Tokuga gains control of them? Or is Tokuga the one to turn the spirits dark and then he gains a level of control over them? That's something that's going to be very interesting to see, especially now that they're calling him half spirit, half human, which isn't initially the way I would have called him, because to me it seems like, okay, a spirit went inside him and altered his physicality. So physically, yes, he looks half spirit, half human, but the way I'd associate being half spirit, half human is not necessarily, I suppose, the way they're going for here. I suppose it's a weird one, because like Korra as the Avatar, like, is she half spirit, half human? Like, I suppose as an overall being, the Avatar is half spirit, half human, by virtue of being a human and a spirit, like, in the same kind of shell type thing. Whereas Tokuga is just a human who's kind of got, like, been slightly altered by a spirit. But obviously it has some sort of an impact on how he can impact spiritual things. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they explain any of that, or if it's just kind of like they explained how he's, like, better now that he's been spirit morphed. Very vague, not technical at all. Because we know that Korra in the spirit world can like morph things around her, but can Tokuga do that? And again, spirit wilds, not spirit world. I keep almost making that mistake of thinking that it says Korra sets out to the spirit world to find her, but that doesn't seem to be the way they're going. And to me, this is the key point. This is the key point, in a way, with the entire book, and what's going to make it interesting for the fandom and for me is, with regards to the spirit portal, are we going to develop the spirit side of things? Because if they don't, I very much am questioning what on earth the plot was. Because it feels like it's just a bunch of our main characters falling over themselves to be like, we have to respect the spirits, respect the spirits, respect the spirits. And no one ever is bringing up the idea of, like, what about the spirits respecting us? Because that's what it feels like, I think, to at least myself and some other people I've talked to, of, like, the spirits have really done very little to, like, open themselves up to improving the relationship between humans and spirits. It feels like it's all placed on humans to be the ones to be very, open to change on this thing. Whereas it really is the spirits who are the ones kind of stuck in their ways and not willing to make any change or compromises. And that's where the interest is going to come from, because in terms of this book revealing new stuff, what's more new than characterizing the spirits and their views on things and potentially making a change for the better? And I see some potential, whereas, like, if Korra manages to change the spirits back to being light spirits, and maybe if they are, as it says here, being directly influenced by Tokuga to do bad things, they would appreciate Korra freeing them and giving them their, like, free will back. But will that be enough of a good thing for them to make any sort of a change and be willing to help Korra out or not? And then in the aftermath of all of this, what exactly are they going to do? Is everyone going to ask Korra to close the central spirit portal, or will it be kept open? I think it will be going backwards with everything to close the central spirit portal. So to me, I think she keeps it open, and we commit to almost the idea she had in the first place, which was to turn it into somewhat of a nature reserve, basically make a park around the place and make it a little bit more respectful to nature. That way humans can go in, spirits can come out, but it's not exactly like an amusement park where they've just turned it into this thing where there'll be, like, massive crowds all over the place here to see it. People will have to be spiritual, to want to go into the spirit portal and do all this stuff. And that gives a reason for maybe the airbenders to kind of watch over it and maybe guide people through the park and introduce them to spirits and help them understand spirits better, and maybe be somewhat of a liaison between spirits and humans. But again, I think key to it is to be presenting both sides of it, because to me it's not that interesting to just see humans talking about how humans will handle spirits, because it's placing all of the blame on humans for everything that's gone wrong, and two, it's almost being like, yeah, we don't know how to write spirits as characters and present their view on things. What's that about? And that's where I'm like, I'd almost prefer it if like an Ai, a Wan Shi Tong, Yue as the moon spirit or the ocean spirit. If one of those big spirits that we know about shows up and speaks to our characters, the Painted Lady, Iroh, any of these spirits who are like out there, I that's what I want to see, because the dragon eel spirits that's talking for the spirits now, just he feels like he's just going backwards with everything. So what exactly is happening here? I think the big question is like, where is Tokuga throughout most of this book? Because it says the spirit wilds, which to me suggests that the triple threats are constantly in the city, that they don't quite go through the spirit portal, but that spirits come out of the spirit portal themselves. And what exactly Tokuga does, I assume he'll suddenly realize he has an influence over these spirits, use them in addition to his triads to attack everyone. A lot of stuff happens. Maybe in all the fracas happening, Asami gets freed, and this opens up Korra to obviously go completely ham on everyone. She can go into the Avatar state now that people are freed, and we can have the big action set piece at the end. As I said before, I do think it will end with Tokuga being spirit bent, probably. Whether that be the impact that has just getting rid of the spiritual side of him and leaving him there, or if they have to do it like a Unavatu style, where it ends up killing Tokuga, but it frees him from the connection to being half spirit, which ends up somewhat helping him in the end. And then, as well as that, are they going to want Korra to in any way empathize with Tokuga in the end, or just that he's someone not worth empathizing? You can take him out, and we won't really judge Korra for having taken out this other villain. Because I don't see any real way, unless they suddenly give him a quick backstory right at the end, how you can sympathize and have us understand Tokuga to a point where we want him to continue on as a character or something like that. It just doesn't feel like that's a possibility right now. If that was, I feel they would have characterized him like that more beforehand. So there's that. And then the whole idea of like the two women must trust in each other and work together if they make it out alive. Make it out of where alive? The spirit wilds? Is this suggesting that the spirit wilds grows suddenly, or is this sort of a kind of a mistype and it's meant to be the spirit world? I think this is a lot of the kind of confusion that's going on here, because I actually recorded this video once before, and then I realized the mistake that I made, whereas I'd initially said spirit world when reading it out, and it interpreted completely differently. And I never once talked about the fact that it said spirit wilds, and was like, okay, so we're in the spirit world for most of the book. Whereas I have to re-record it here and kind of be aware of like that it says spirit wilds, but does it mean spirit world? I'm not sure. I'd be disappointed if we don't go into the spirit world at all to see what's happening. The other thing in this is, like the presidential race arc, is the human spirit conflict, is it in any way aiming to be resolved in Turf Wars, or is this just meant to be a step towards something better, and will be a long ongoing process for Korra of trying to bring humans and spirits together? I'm not sure, but I feel the way to end it right now is probably with Korra's idea of the park around the spirit world, or something like that. Maybe someone else has a better idea for it. I think that covers most of it. I suppose in the aftermath of this, Tokuga obviously is going to be defeated. I think that's very, very obvious. What happens to the triads in the aftermath of all of this? The creeping crystals are out there. Right now it seems like the only triads in the city are the creeping crystals and the triple threats. I see very little way where this book can end and the triple threats remain a thing within the series almost. It feels like the defeat in Turf Wars almost has to be that, like, for the most part, Turf Wars is done. Unless they do some weird thing where, like, in all the craziness happening, the triads that are in prison currently get freed and end up kind of missing out on most of the actions of the likes of Two-Toed Ping and so on. They end up surviving, and even though Tokuga's triple threats are defeated, Shady Shin and Two-Toed Ping are out, and they start the triple threats again in their largely ineffectual selves, and it's only the creeping crystals out there to contend with. As for the creeping crystals themselves, I get the impression that Jargala will probably do something in this book. I don't really know what, but it felt like the way they were setting her up is that they're going to lead to her actually doing something of note. I can see her actually having the creeping crystals side against the triads in all of this to maybe help the police force, and then maybe kind of, just as maybe Lynn goes around to arrest all the creeping crystals, even though they helped out, they're gone, and it's just kind of like, oh, the creeping crystals, they're slightly more honorable than the other triads, so they're not as big of a threat to the city, but we still have to watch out. I can see it maybe being something like that, but I'm not sure, because I feel that they almost have to do another scene with like Jargala and Asami. It feels like they were almost setting up that there needs to be another scene there. If not, it makes the scene that they had from part 2 feel very weird. But I can see them doing something cool, just regards to like an action scene of Jargala bending, doing something cool. But yeah, to me, this kind of has to be like the triads almost eliminated for the most part as a threat within the city, because unless you're gonna like commit to just reverting it back to the way it was, where like the triads disband and we're back to having all the other ones again, the Terra Triads back, the Red Monsoons, the Agni Kais, all this sort of stuff are back, and here are the Equalists as well, because I think that's a big talking point of like, in all this triad discussion, why aren't the Equalists being mentioned? And that just because Amon was defeated doesn't mean the Equalists were gone. Like, the core video game addresses that the Equalists continued on after that, and even though they were defeated in the video game as well, it was never made clear that the Equalists were just gone. So why not just include the Equalist as like a non-bending triad? Because that would be a cool thing. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't familiar with the video game and aren't aware that the Equalists have come back since book 1, and it would be a really cool thing in the comic to just see like the return of the Equalists. But we'll have to wait and see. If this leads to a lot of the bending triads being defeated, that would actually be a cool way for the non-bender triads to come back into play, which would be fun. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Turf Wars Part 3. That's roughly what I feel is going to happen here. I think the really like unique aspect that I'm unsure about is the exact details of what they're going to do with the human spirit conflict, the spear portal itself, and just that kind of plot point, because it was so ignored basically in part 2. I really don't know what direction they're heading in for part 3. But other than that, as I said, I think the presidential race will be kind of kept back, or if they do resolve it here, it'll be because Raiko has to like abandon the race and Julie becomes it by default. Other than that, like, I don't really expect any huge character moments between the characters. I think we'll get some cute Korosami moments. Probably the best I think we can hope for is some sort of a Mako scene with Korra and Asami. And other than that, I'm not sure. Like, will the Airbenders on their march get any sort of a focus? I think that's just a way to have a bunch of Airbenders be involved in the fight when everything comes together in the city, because you'll have the police force there, the Airbenders, you'll have Korra, you'll have Tokuga. Will they attempt to maybe have some sort of an argument around the portal at this point in time about what to do? I don't know. But that's my thoughts on Turf Wars Part 3. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on what you think will happen in Turf Wars Part 3, all of the different plot points. And then, if there's anything I didn't address in this video, any kind of plot points you feel are present in the show, in the book, that you want my thoughts on, leave that in the comments below and I will definitely reply to it. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and